Michael Steele. I'm a huge believer in, actually, I'm a huge opponent of rolling disclosure. I think it's so vital that politicians be the first, like in The Godfather, Michael, that they tell you that, as The Godfather said, I think it was his lawyer that said, Tom Hagen said, my lawyer always insists on getting bad news fast. He wants the bad news, and I'm sure the Congresswoman agrees. You want the staffer to come racing into the office and not sit on it for 3 days. And here we have a couple of situations. The JV team over in Iraq and Syria that's now becoming a global threat, supposedly. So is ISIS a JV team, or what is it? And I'm just wondering about this effort to try to downplay concerns at the expense of being a truth teller. It is a problem.
It is time for the Malzberg panel, and this hour we're joined by Christy Setzer, a Democratic strategist and former spokesperson for Al Gore. She's now the president of New Heights Communications. We're also joined by Roger Hedgecock, host of the nationally syndicated Roger Hedgecock Show, available from Radio America. Welcome to you both. Let's get right to it. Guys, you may have heard this last night from Chris Matthews over at MSNBC, who doesn't really believe that the government's telling us the truth about the Ebola virus. John, what do you think? Starting with you, John. John Fun's here.
Sorry.
Caught him right there.
I personally think that we're handling it fairly well after a slow start. Clearly, the president was caught flat-footed when he said it was unlikely that Ebola was going to arrive in the U.S. It has arrived, but CDC is scrambling. We've done a quarantine. I think so far, so good.
Roger, what do you think? Are we getting the straight scoop out of the CDC and the White House, or are they not telling us things we should know?
I think they're downplaying the actual danger because they don't want people to panic. I also think Chris Matthews has fallen out of love with Obama and the tingle is gone. But in terms of CDC,
the tingle's no longer there?
The tingle is gone. It's clear from that clip you put. So here's
Christy, you want to defend a little bit here?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Look, I agree that I think the Ebola fears are overblown. And so I think that when the president goes on television in just about 20 minutes from now and talks to America about Ebola, what he's basically going to say is that this is very, very well under control. We're talking about, basically 2 people who are quarantined, who are fine, and who only if you actually come into contact and exchange bodily fluids with someone who has Ebola could you be under any risk. So I think he's basically going to tell America, calm down.
Well, true enough, Christy, but an NBC cameraman in Liberia was infected with Ebola, and he was just covering
That's right, he was. But
the
he was somebody who was a Liberian national who probably had the virus, or so NBC believes, before he in any way came into contact with them. So again, it's not as though this is, something that's happening on American soil. It's something that's happening, as we already knew, on African soil. And that, for the very, very few number of Americans who come into contact with Africans who might be infected with Ebola on African soil, yes, this could be a concern, but otherwise, I think you're safe.
Christy, that's a great point, because we have not really heard much about what his nationality was, and he did just start on the job, I believe, 2 weeks ago. That would explain a question that I had. Roger, I'm curious what you think. We've had some doctors in who have told us that we're going to see more cases of Ebola here in the United States. That should be expected. How do you think we manage the communication on this so people don't panic and assume that a few more cases means we're going to have a pandemic?
Well, first of all, we better step up preparations by CDC in all of our hospitals, because Presbyterian down in Dallas was obviously not ready for this kind of thing. And I think, contrary to what Christy just said, it's obvious that we don't come into contact with Africans until they fly into this country. We still have flights from Liberia. There's 3 countries now in Africa that have banned flights. The UK have banned them. The French have banned them. We should ban those flights now before more infected people come in that are asymptomatic at this point, but come in like Duncan did and develop symptoms later.
Roger, is it that simple? Because the reality is all somebody from Liberia has to do is take a flight to a European nation, change planes, get on a plane and come to the U.S.
Oh, no, but listen, we can find out if they're making a transfer.
Right.
All of that is tracked on passport entries back and forth and on airline manifests. So we can find out if they're flying from Africa to Europe and then to the U.S.
Well, Christy, what do you think about what the White House has been saying, and the CDC, that it's impractical to do this, that it would have a negative economic impact if we were to bar people from coming in?
Right. I mean, I guess I'm going to say I think that the CDC probably knows better than I do, but I think it's a hard question because I do think that it sounds really logical to Americans to say, sure, this is basically, we're only talking about a couple of basically small African nations here. Why can't we just, ban flights from those places for at least the period of time until they get this under control? So I actually do think that that's something that they're going to have to consider in a more serious way if we continue to see more cases.
So guys, you're coming back with us later in the hour. We're gonna sneak off for now, but we will see you again soon. Coming up next, president of Pioneer Engineering and Pioneer Astronomics. Try and say that quickly. Dr. Robert Zubin joins us in just a moment.